Hi guys, it's Q&A time. So as usual, I'm going to start with the pre-submitted questions. There's just a couple, so it shouldn't take too long. And then I'm going to try to get through as many as possible of the questions submitted in the Q&A box. Just as a reminder, this is not medical advice. This is just a conversation. And if you're thinking about changing anything in your healthcare routine, whether that's starting something or stopping something, please consult your healthcare provider before doing so. All right, so here we go. Someone had a question about male fertility suggestions. So male fertility, you should pretty much approach it the same way as female fertility. We need pretty much the same nutrients as males do. So we want to make sure we're getting enough animal foods, enough fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K, enough minerals like copper, zinc, magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, etc. We want to make sure we're also getting enough vitamins too, like B vitamins, vitamin C, etc. So these are all vitamins that are really important for female fertility, but they're also really important for male fertility. And then there's the basics, like are you getting enough sunlight, sleep, making sure you're not over-exercising. Movement is good, but just not in excess. Managing your stress. So a lot of males actually tend to be not as in tune with their stress levels as females are. This even goes just from observation with my clients, like they're just way less aware of how something is affecting them. Something could be stressing them out quite a bit, but they don't actually register that. And so managing your stress is quite important, and getting in tune and really becoming self-aware of what's actually triggering you, whether that's nutritional stress, emotional stress, work stress, physical stress, chemical stress, etc. Because there's so many types of stress. Please don't keep your phone near your gonads. That's all I got to say. Don't keep your phone in your pocket, anywhere near that junk. If you're doing things like smoking pot, just stop. But it's pretty straightforward. There's no magic to it, but make sure you're nourishing yourself and keeping stress low. I almost forgot to mention the course that the Preconception PT and I are working on. This is a preconception course that you yourself will be able to go through as a female trying to prepare your body for conception, but also you can most definitely involve your partner, especially in the nutrition stuff. So keep an eye out. Another question is, what do you suggest for preventing pregnancy that doesn't contain hormones? What do you think of the copper IUD? So I've talked about this before, and I suggest actually checking out my podcast with Matt Blackburn. I talked a lot about kind of pros and cons of birth control and other, contraceptive options, but every contraceptive is going to have a con, and it's really up to you to weigh the cons to kind of fit your situation. So that said, I personally think that hormonal birth control is extremely harmful to women. There's just loads and loads of evidence, and I've posted about it before, and I'm going to continue posting about it because there's just so much I could talk about. I really don't like that option. But the copper IUD, I've had it myself, and while I didn't experience terrible symptoms, I would never do it again, just because of the way that I understand a lot better now. It's you insert a foreign object into your uterus. Your uterus is very delicate. I don't believe anything should really ever enter that, unless you're birthing a child out of it. So putting a foreign object in your uterus, there's a lot of risk with that. You can perforate your uterus. You can damage, the lining of your uterus, because you're literally putting something in your uterus and having to take it out eventually. Then there's the copper aspect of it. So in a very estrogen dominant person, this copper IUD will probably not bode well for them. It can, contribute to copper excess too in non-estrogen dominant people, which also kind of perpetuates estrogen dominance in any way. I can tell when someone has an IUD, a copper IUD, on their hair tissue mineral analysis, which I run for clients often, most clients. And so what happens is that's unbound copper, and we need copper. For copper to work well in the body, it needs to be bound to in a protein called ceruloplasmin. And so we have excess unbound copper in the body, which wreaks havoc, especially on the emotional state of the person. A copper IUD can really take somebody into a very dark emotional state. And so, I really don't like that option either. The option that I like the most is the fertility awareness method, which is also called FAM. It teaches you how to get really in tune with your cycle, which I think every woman should be, not only because it's empowering, but you really understand your body, your physiology. You understand what your body needs by doing this. And it's also it's actually more successful in terms of preventing pregnancy than the birth control pill. And it's also the least invasive or harmful to the body. I really like this option, especially if you have a long-term partner where, there's a lot of trust. That of course depends on your situation too. Again, goes back to your situation. Are you single, and what are your goals? So there's a lot to consider when making the decision of what the right contraceptive is for you. But I highly suggest reading Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. That teaches you the ins and outs of tracking your cycle. Highly recommended. I think actually every girl should learn how to do this very early on, maybe around 8 or 9 years old. I think we would all be more and better well off for it. So hope that helps. Question is, are you against all supplements or just synthetic versions? What about cod liver oil and ionic magnesium, desiccated beef liver, seaweed? So I'm not against all supplements, and I'm also not against all synthetic supplements. I think we need to supplement certain things. But just because, we can supplement whatever we want doesn't mean it's the best for us. The best form for us, the best option for us. I'm pretty much a whole food supplement person. And when I say that, I mean getting it from food, not from whole food supplements. So wherever I can, I try to increase the vitamin and nutrients and minerals that I'm getting from my food through food. If I know that I'm deficient in something, I'm going to try to get it through food first rather than resorting to supplementation. Where I'm against supplementation is, I think a lot of people use it as a security blanket, and they supplements certain minerals, vitamins, whatever, willy-nilly without understanding the repercussions that supplementing certain isolated nutrients or certain, multi-vitamins or prenatals can have on the body, because a lot of the time certain things should not be supplemented ever, or they're in the wrong ratios, or the synthetic versions are actually going to do us more damage than good. So it's complicated. That's the short answer. But I do really like magnesium, for example. I think that it's beneficial for a lot of people. We are pretty much all deficient in magnesium. I like vitamin E, for example. To answer your questions about the cod liver oil, I don't like most brands. It's a PUFA. Cod liver oil is a PUFA. It is part of the root cause protocol, but its main goal is to increase retinol. And you can get that from beef liver. So if I can get somebody to have beef liver, I'm gonna get them to have beef liver over cod liver oil for that vitamin A. That said, beef liver doesn't work for everyone. So in very, very, very rare occasions, I may have somebody take cod liver oil, maybe, but it's never going to come from anywhere else other than Rosita's. And then ionic magnesium, that's great. That's a great form of magnesium. You get it in trace mineral drops. Desiccated beef liver, again, I've mentioned this before, I love it, but again, not everyone can handle it. So it really depends on the person and the state of the body. And then seaweed, yeah, that's great. It's a great for iodine, but do you need it? That's the question. I'm sensitive to water that contains sulfates/sulfites. Is this my body not functioning properly, or are some people just sensitive? So it could be that you're just sensitive, but usually sensitivity means nutrient deficiencies. So in order to make sulfate, which is what helps detoxify sulfites, you need molybdenum, you need magnesium, you need zinc, and you need B vitamins like B1, B2, B5, and B6, I think. So if you're deficient in any of these, you're going to have trouble making sulfate to detoxify sulfites. I would also be really curious if you have histamines or histamine intolerance, quote unquote, where you're unable to clear histamines properly. That usually goes hand in hand with this. And, you know, it could also be something else in your water, like chlorine, or so I wouldn't rule out any other things like chlorine, or, you know, there's also medications in unfiltered water. There's pesticides and herbicides. Could be heavy metals. So I'd be really curious to know exactly what kind of water you're drinking before blaming it on sulfates or sulfites. Collagen has no methionine. Will it deplete me? So not necessarily, because if you're getting protein from other animal sources, as you know, protein should come from something with eyes, you won't be getting plenty of animal protein, or methionine, excuse me. So, you know, it's not necessarily a worry, and that's kind of the benefit of collagen, is that it's so much higher in amino acids that help counterbalance the more inflammatory amino acids like methionine. Collagen contains glycine and things like taurine, so and proline. So like it's actually a very beneficial supplement, which is exactly what it is, to a good and well-balanced diet. You can also get, you know, whole food collagen from things like bone broth and things that have gelatin. So I would say, you know, it's probably a good thing to include. How to take magnesium bicarbonate? So I personally take this, or at least I ran out recently, so I haven't taken it in a little while. But when I have it, I personally take it in between meals, extremely diluted. So I would actually follow the instructions on the bottle. I think it's something like 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons per 8 ounces of water. So making sure you're diluting that really well, because it does decrease our stomach acid or neutralize our stomach acid. So this is not something we want to take around food, because we may have indigestion. So definitely take it away from food, but honestly, like, you know, between meals, it's not that complicated. Take it when, you know, you feels right for you. Maybe before bed could be nice too. It depends how it makes you feel. So if it makes you feel more energized, maybe take it earlier in the day. If not, maybe later in the day, but up to you. I have high B12. What does it mean? So this could mean a couple of things. Number one, if we are in a hypometabolic state, so a very stressed state, inflamed state, our metabolism is not functioning properly, our liver is going to be very sluggish. And it's going to be sluggish at clearing out estrogen. It's also going to be sluggish in processing B12 and other things, other minerals. So it's basically an elevated level of B12 because your liver can't deal with it right now. It could also be the MTHFR, an active MTHFR gene mutation. And why I say that is because, remember, our environment is what turns on our genes on and off. It's not necessarily, I have this gene mutation and I'm destined to have this issue forever and ever. No, that's not true. So if it's an active MTHFR gene mutation, your body will have trouble breaking down B12. So what can you do? Well, I would definitely not take a B12 supplement. That's personally, I wouldn't do that because that's not solving the problem. I would try to get to the root cause of why either my liver is really sluggish, or my MTHFR gene mutation has been turned on. At the end of the day, it comes down to stress and figuring out what those stressors are, whether it's nutritional, chemical, life financial, emotional. There's just so many things. Iron overload is another big stressor, magnesium deficiency. So really figuring out what the drivers of the stresses are, and over time you will see your B12 utilization improve. Thoughts on long-term side effects of a vasectomy. So I haven't done too much research into vasectomies yet, but what I do know is that Dr. Ray Peat has talked about how vasectomies can lead to emotional problems and impotence in men, and that the vasectomy basically signals to the testicles to stop making progesterone, which is a very, very, very important hormone, not only for women, but for men too. So that alone, I don't know about you, but that's pretty scary. And then there's a doctor also, Dr. Roberts, I can't remember his first name. He talks about how vasectomies can impact our immune system, allergies, and also they can have carcinogenic effects, so cancer promoting effects. So all of those considered, I probably know. What causes biliary colic? So biliary colic is the pain you feel when you're passing a gallstone. So gallstones. If someone has fructose malabsorption, what to do before trying pro-metabolic foods? So fructose, comes from fruit. It's not the only pro-metabolic food that you can incorporate into your diet. There are many, many pro-metabolic foods, for example, like bone broths, high-quality muscle meats, grass-fed meats, dairy, high-quality dairy, cheese, if they can tolerate it, of course, certain starchy vegetables. So this person has probably been eating in a way that is very processed and very their whole life. So maybe a lot of high fructose corn syrup, a lot of processed refined foods, crappy oils. They probably actually have iron overload as well, and they're probably lacking the fructose carriers that help break down the fructose in the body. So starting to shift their diet towards pro-metabolic is not probably only going to help them. Should postmenopausal women with PD, I'm guessing this is Parkinson's disease, do quarterly blood draws? My answer would be yes. Anyone that is not cycling should definitely do blood donations, and Parkinson's disease is a hallmark neurological condition that is due to copper deficiency and iron overload. So, of course, there's some preparation that needs to happen before that, getting your minerals up. Blood donations come a little bit further down the line, a couple months preparation at least. But yes, this is probably going to be very beneficial. Blood pressure drop, dizziness, hot, cold sweats, extreme cramps for only 2 hours on day 1 of period. So, it's not normal. But my question to you would be, how was the rest of your cycle? What did you do? How did you nourish yourself? How did you live your life during, the days leading up to your cycle? Because the way that we live our life and nourish ourselves throughout our entire cycle will determine how we experience our period. If it's going to be good, easy, or if it's going to be really terrible and crampy and estrogenic. So the symptoms that you're experiencing can have a lot to do with high estrogen right before your period. You probably have a little bit of estrogen dominance. This is just speculation though, so take this with a grain of salt. And speaking of salts, you are bleeding, and if you don't have enough minerals, if you're not repleting your minerals, we are losing blood. So it's very depleting, because blood doesn't just contain iron or the uterine lining, it contains plasma, which contains a lot of minerals like salt, potassium, magnesium. So, my guess would be that you're probably a little deficient in minerals as well. So making sure that you're properly nourishing yourself starting on day 1 of your cycle, throughout your cycle, to ensure the easiest possible period next time would be my recommendation. But again, I don't know your situation. I don't know what kind of stressors you're under either. Those are probably worth looking at as well. Can gut dysbiosis lead to hormonal issues? Yeah, of course it can. So, if we have gut dysbiosis, so imbalanced bacteria in the gut, we probably have estrogen overload. We probably have excess serotonin, because estrogen kind of perpetuates serotonin, and serotonin could also be a driver of things like IBS and other digestive issues, and we might also have low melatonin, because melatonin also gets produced in the gut as well. We may have inability to digest dairy because our small intestine also cannot doesn't have enough thyroid hormone or progesterone to digest food either. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. So if you need to heal your gut, you probably have to heal your hormones. And if you need to heal your hormones, you probably have to heal your gut. What is the difference between cholesterol and triglycerides? So I highly suggest reading the last 2 posts that I did on cholesterol. They're pretty recent. Triglycerides, they are basically when you eat and you have excess calories. This is the simplest way I'm going to explain it, but when you eat, you have excess calories. The body converts the excess calories, excess fuel that it's not going to be able to use right away into triglycerides for later. And usually those get stored in fat cells. But if we have a lot, it could point to a metabolic issue, and it usually does. So triglycerides, I would say, are not very good. They're free fatty acids in the bloodstream. No bueno. Cholesterol is not inherently bad. Please go read my posts. It points to, if it's high, it points to inflammation in the body and other issues like hypothyroidism and iron overload. So in short, both can be a sign of metabolic dysfunction. I'm vitamin D deficient and have osteoporosis. What else can I do if I can't take vitamin D? So if you don't want to take vitamin D, which is not going to solve the problem, so good on you. I highly recommend reading my other posts. I have one titled Magnesium or vitamin D, and it's crossed out, and it's actually a magnesium deficiency. So if you're deficient in vitamin D, you're definitely deficient in magnesium. And then if you're vitamin D deficient and you have osteoporosis, I also have a post on osteoporosis. It's called Bone Loss 101, Osteoporosis and Osteopenia. There are multiple factors that you need to consider when, considering bone health and improving bone health. One is copper. So copper deficiency and iron overload can lead to loss of bone. Stress can lead to loss of bone because it's demineralizing. And that said, bone is not just made of calcium. It's made of many, many, many things like calcium, magnesium, boron, potassium, so many other things. I think there's like 7 or 8 or maybe even 11 things that it's made of. I can't recall right now, but there's just so many other nutrients. So you're probably deficient in other nutrients as well. And then, progesterone, hormones are so important as well. So low progesterone can lead to bone loss too. So making sure that you're cycling, and if you're not, what are you doing to maintain your progesterone production? Is it, progesterone supplements or things like that? Giving blood, things like that. So go read those posts. I think they'll be highly beneficial. Root cause of varicose veins and what to do about it. So varicose veins have a lot to do with copper. They have a lot to do with high estrogen, which also leads to iron overload, which also leads to copper deficiency. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. It goes back to copper deficiency. So read that post. There's some foods that you can focus on in there. That's what I would recommend starting with. What enzymes to detox serotonin? How can I detox it? So serotonin isn't something that you can necessarily detoxify, quote unquote. You just need to make sure, the number one thing you need to make sure that you're doing is making sure that your body can actually utilize it properly. So you need copper to properly convert serotonin into melatonin. That's number one. So making sure you're converting efficiently, because if there's a backup, you're going to have excess serotonin. So that means not taking melatonin either. I would highly suggest checking out my post called Melatonin, Trash It. And also do things that minimize serotonin creation. So making sure we're keeping our metabolism up. Hypothyroidism will perpetuate high serotonin. Also making sure we're sleeping well, making sure we don't have any gut issues. So endotoxin, that can be super harmful and perpetuate serotonin. Avoiding super high serotonin foods. Check out my post on serotonin. Low vitamin D on labs, but still sitting in the sun approximately 20 minutes a day. Thanks. So again, I would go check out my post titled vitamin D and crossed out, and then it says magnesium deficiency. So this is a clear magnesium deficiency. And yeah, I would try to get those levels up. My wife is pregnant with our third. What do you recommend in terms of vitamins? So I'll be talking about this more in the course I'm creating with the Preconception PT. So stay tuned. I can't find milk without added vitamin A or D. Typically one or the other, which is better? It's a really good question. I would highly avoid vitamin D as much as possible. That's what I would choose personally if I had to make a choice. But yeah, I would suggest trying to find maybe a local farmer to get milk from. That might be a better option. Vitamin A, synthetic vitamin A, they usually add retinol palmitate to milk. That can feed bad gut bacteria and cause a lot of other issues. So that would be my suggestion. What if high cholesterol is passed in your family history? So if this is the case, it's probably hypothyroidism and or iron excess, generational. So I would probably get those checked out, but let's take a step back and think, high cholesterol isn't necessarily terrible. Like, I would rather have high cholesterol than low cholesterol. Low cholesterol has so many other implications. It's kind of scary. So, that said, I wouldn't chase it necessarily. I would just make sure I'm supporting myself, my metabolism, living a lifestyle that is really supportive of health and eating nutritious foods and just supporting my body overall. How to increase fertility for conception, what to do about the short fertility window, help. So I'll be talking about this more in the course I'm creating with the Preconception PT. As for short fertility windows, preparation is the best thing you can do regardless of, what your fertility window is. So whether it's like your society, family, doctors telling you, oh, your fertility window is decreasing, get to it. There's nothing better that you can do to not only support your own fertility, but the health of your future child than giving a lot of time and preparation for preconception. So preconception prep is so important, and it's regardless of what your fertility window looks like, quote unquote, there's nothing better than you can do than taking your time and really preparing nutritionally and lifestyle wise. Are bananas a really good source of potassium, or is that a misconception? No, they're actually a pretty good source of potassium. Hi, do you recommend vitamin E supplements be mixed tocopherols? Yes, I do. What are your thoughts on refined sugar? I don't have anything against refined sugar. I just make sure it's organic because most conventional sugar, refined sugar, is made from sugar beets, which is, they use a lot of glyphosate and pesticides on this. So I always try to make sure it's organic, but otherwise I don't worry about it. Would boiling tap water have a filtering effect on it where it would be okay to drink? So not really. Boiling it would just heat up. It would kill bacteria probably and pathogens, but it would likely just be heating chlorine, fluoride, medications, all that fun stuff that's also in water that you're not getting rid of. So I would definitely get a filter. How can I safely ensure my baby gets adequate vitamin D and iron so I can stop the pediatrician? So I would highly recommend checking out my last recording of questions. The thing that pediatricians don't quite understand is that breast milk does not have iron or vitamin D in it because that is Mother Nature's design. It's not supposed to. The baby's not supposed to get it until their immune system has been developed more. So, I don't really have an answer for you there if they don't understand this fundamental concept. But, sunlight is not quite a bad thing for babies to get. Just make sure they don't burn because they're still developing, and then make sure you're getting enough food and nourishment, and copper I would say is way more important than iron in your diet so that the baby can be healthy. Period migraine and nausea related to high estrogen? Yes, probably. Estrogen can disrupt our digestion. It can also give us migraines. Minerals can also give us migraines too, though. So it's really about how you are going into your period, how your entire cycle was prior, how even 3 cycles ago was prior. So are you nourishing yourself enough? Are you eating enough minerals, vitamins, macronutrients like fats, proteins, carbs? So making sure you're really covering all bases and eating frequently enough to support estrogen detoxification, making sure you're having a raw carrot or raw carrot salad every day. So those kind of things I would reassess if you're doing them all. What is your opinion on the adrenal cocktail? I think it's excellent. It's a great way to get sodium, potassium, vitamin C. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about it. Will beef liver capsules help restore depleted nutrients after a birth control pill? Yeah, potentially. It also depends on what you're eating, how long you've been on it, if beef liver capsules work for you. There's a lot of questions, but overall, it's generally a very good whole food supplement. Does estrogen dominance have anything to do with being cold all the time, just not hands and feet? Yeah, totally. It also has to do with hypothyroidism, and estrogen dominance and hypothyroidism usually go hand in hand. So there's definitely some metabolic dysfunction, especially if you're feeling it, not just in your hands and feet, but overall. How to reverse anemia when gut inflammation and cannot absorb nutrients from food. So you have to address the inflammation, and usually it's stress. So stress causes, it decreases our ability to digest food, and so if there's anemia because of gut inflammation, we have to look even further up the chain. And so by restoring your digestive function, you can actually get rid of your anemia. I don't know what those stressors are for you, so you have to kind of look at your life, make sure you're nourishing yourself frequently enough, properly enough. Physical stressors, emotional stressors, those all should be taken into account as well. If you are obese and need to lose weight, should you be eating the same way as if you are a healthy weight? So I think you're referring to probably asking about caloric intake, and if so, I would say no, because if you slash your calories, that's going to create even more stress and more fat storage. We are probably obese because our body doesn't feel safe, and it doesn't feel safe because it probably is not getting the proper nutrients that it needs. So we have to focus on repleting and re-nourishing ourselves, getting the proper vitamins and minerals and macronutrients before we even think about cutting calories again. So you have to allow your body to feel full, whatever that amount of food is, and really just kind of give your body space to let it do its thing. And once you've created a good foundation, then you can start thinking about cutting calories. But no, I wouldn't recommend, dropping calories really quickly to let it do its thing. And once you've created a good foundation, then you can start thinking about cutting calories. But no, I wouldn't recommend, dropping calories really quickly. I gotta go walk this one. So thanks for your questions, and see you next week.